We're going to start off with Abu Ubaidah, inshallah, and then we'll go ahead and move on to Khawla, radiallahu anhum, and then, inshallah, we'll go ahead and at the end bring together similarities and things like that between them and what we can derive from different lessons. So Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah, just really quickly first, who's heard of him before? All right. Okay, cool. And then how about Khawla? Who's heard of Khawla? Okay. All right, awesome. So then we'll start from the beginning with Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah and his childhood and his relations with his family and his father, things like that. So he was born before Islam, and he was one of the earliest converts to Islam in his later years. And what had happened was he was one of the converts that Abu Bakr, in the very, very first few weeks, months of Islam, he went out and made da'wah to specific people. Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah is one of those people. So he was one of the people that Abu Bakr told about Islam, and he was one of the first to accept Islam. And he has the honor of that. But before Islam, he spent a lot of time with his father. It's okay. So Abu Ubaidah spent a lot of time with his father, and what he did with his father is what we would call nowadays more like a regimen. It wasn't like, go out to the park and play type things. His father was basically training him to be a man, to be a soldier, to be these types of things. So what Abu Ubaidah's childhood is described as with his relationship with his father is a bonding one, definitely. As I'm sure most of you guys know, if you do hard labor with your fathers, it kind of brings you closer together. So by the time he was 5 years old, his father had him pick up heavy objects, mainly small boulders or stones and things, and do squats with them, just to build strength. So he was about 4 or 5 years old when he's doing this. And then after that, Abu Ubaidah's father, taught him how to haul heavy animals. So you can imagine farming, things like that. You're hauling maybe horses, oxen, things like that. These 2-ton animals or 1-ton, 2,000-pound animals. And he's about, let's say, 6 or 7 years old, hauling these animals around to do different types of work, to do different types of things. And then it gets interesting. By the time he was 8 years old, so imagine just the little 8-year-olds that run around the masjid, things like that. He was taught archery. And so he was given a weapon and taught how to shoot at a stationary target. By the time he was 10 years old, he was riding on a horse or on an animal and shooting at targets. And by the time he was 12 years old, he was riding on horses and shooting at moving targets. So if any of you have ever even tried archery, it's hard to draw the bow. All right, so this 12-year-old is on a horse, riding, shooting different targets, moving targets. And if any of you have never ridden a horse, it's even harder to ride when you're not using your hands and you're using a bow instead. So you have to completely steer the horse with just your legs. And it's a 12-year-old doing this, so he maybe is a tenth the weight of the horse or so. So yeah, he's definitely a outdoorsman type guy. He's definitely you can tell he built strength from a young age. Very driven, very disciplined as well. And he spent a lot of time with his father. You can tell doing those things because you need guidance to do those types of things. But eventually he did accept Islam. And what happened was that his father did not accept Islam. His father was a big proponent against him accepting Islam. And he was so much so that he wanted to kill Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah. So his father wanted to kill him. So Abu Ubaidah was one of those that made hijrah to Abyssinia. So he was one of the few that made both hijras, one to Abyssinia and then one to Medina. So he has the honor of being of the few that made both hijras and the honor of being of the few of being of the first of the Muslims. So that's a little bit of background on Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah. So how was his relationship with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So now it's Islamic, the messages come, things like that. He went to Abyssinia, and now he's back with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam after being in Abyssinia. So when he I'm not sure if this was before or after he migrated. I should look that up. But he did go through the boycott with the Muslims. So Abu Ubaidah was there with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the boycott that was happening. So he experienced all of that with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He endured it, and you'll see throughout his life how really Abu Ubaidah was a simple, very simple man. He didn't really divulge much in the luxuries of dunya. And although this was a really harsh experience for the Muslims, after hearing more about Abu Ubaidah, you might imagine that he probably had one of the easiest times with this, just from knowing what his normal lifestyle was like compared to what the boycott may have been like. His skill sets as a warrior, because I know this, the whole title of this is Strength Through Love. So let's go for the strengths part first. He had an ability to scout an area extremely well. So what he would do for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, especially at the Battle of Badr, he was able to look at an area, and he would, just from looking at the amount of footprints and things like that, and you could imagine this being like in a desert type area, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, with the sand always moving, things like that. But he was able to tell an extremely accurate estimate of how many other soldiers there were in the enemy camps that had once stayed there. And not only that, but he could also tell how many animals they had. And he would do that by looking at the different dung that was around. And not only that, but by the quality of those droppings, he could tell which animals were war animals, which animals were used for carrying luggage, and how many they had of each. And so you can imagine that how useful that would actually be in battle when you don't have like GPS, radar, those types of things. But instead you just have Abu Ubaidah just look at a place and be like, oh yeah, there were X amount of enemy soldiers here, they had so many horses, they had so many camels, they had all this, and then he'd basically be able to tell that just from looking at an area that they had once been. So you can tell he's very attuned to like nature, outdoors, all these types of things. He's and what we would call in today like a man's man type thing, is an outdoorsman. He's very in tune with his inner nature. So other honors that he had was in the Battle of Uhud. So we know in the Battle of Uhud, for those of you that are forgetting, is the one where the archers were up on the hill and then they left. That's Battle of Uhud. And then there was a big turnover with Khalid ibn Walid on the other side, coming back with cavalry to attack the Muslims from behind. So after they had attacked the Muslims from behind, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and a couple of other Sahabi ran up the Uhud, and they were kind of locked up in that area. They were getting bombarded, things like that. Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah was one of the people protecting Rasulullah ﷺ. I think there were about 10 Sahabi around him. And again, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is going to be the focus of the attack. So by the time they got up, Rasulullah ﷺ was injured badly at Uhud. And one of the injuries was his helmet had been pushed into his cheek, and it was cutting deeply into his cheek, and it was stuck there. And what had happened is Abu Bakr ibn Siddiq was about to try and remove it, but Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah stopped him and said, let me do this. But your cheek and your face is a very sensitive area, right? You can tell, like, okay, it's obviously painful, like if something's hitting your cheek. Think about removing that thing from your cheek. You want to do it in a way that you don't interfere with any skin or anything like that as much as possible. So Abu Ubaidah does, in order to help prevent Rasulullah from feeling any more pain than he needs to, is he takes his teeth and he bites into the helmet and pulls it out. And in doing so, he breaks one of his own teeth. So you can imagine how hard he's biting onto this helmet to make sure it's one clean pull, so then it doesn't injure Rasulullah anymore. But that's not all, because there were two things stuck in Rasulullah's cheeks. So he has to go to the other one, he does it again, and he pulls out his other tooth. And so after this point on, Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah, he had a speech impediment because of this, because he was missing two of his front teeth. So that was Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah at Uhud. So he's one of those that protected Rasulullah, one of the small band of people that was around him fighting actively, and then he helped Rasulullah by taking out that helmet in a as much of a painless way as he could. And then I think it was Abu Bakr that joked around afterwards saying that Abu Ubaidah is the best of us at removing his own teeth. And then there was the Battle of Badr. So the Battle of Badr is a very sad story, but still an inspiring one for Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah. And it was a scary one at first for him too. What had happened was his father was fighting on the other side in the Battle of Badr. So Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah is fighting with the Muslims, and he's in the vanguard. And for those of you who don't know what a vanguard is, A vanguard goes in and comes back, and it goes in and it comes back into the enemy army. It's kind of like the front lines. And what the Muslims would do is that they would put their most skilled fighters in the vanguard, not like you see on TV where it's like all the like terrible ones that like miss, like the stormtroopers that shoot left and right. No, it's the best of the soldiers are in the vanguard, so then that way they're protecting the rest of the army. So what would happen is he would see his father in battle. So let's say that I'll play the role yeah, sure, I'll be able to do that inshallah. And Akram, you can be Abu Ubaida's father, okay?
Stand up.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say I'm the vanguard, this is an army, and you guys will be the Muslim army, so I'll be over here. And then, so I'm fighting. You're trying to find me. Your whole mission in this entire battle is just to kill me, your son. So that's, so come on, try and find me. So then, there comes to a point where he gets close, Abu Ubaidah tries to retreat. And then he goes around, and he goes to another place, and then he tries and follows. And then so he goes around, and he comes to another place, and he tries and follows, until a situation kind of like this is happening, where he can't go back anymore. His father is basically stopping him completely from moving. And what happens is, Abu Ubaidah, he can't do this anymore in the middle of a battle. He can't keep on running away from one person, and that person is trying to actively kill him. So what he does is, he just with one slash of his sword, he just kills his father in the battle of Badr. So after this, he was like, the Muslims were very scared for Abu Ubaidah because he had murdered his own father, and obviously it was somebody that he loved very much, and the Muslims didn't know what to do with this or how to deal with it until a verse in the Quran was revealed because of this. So also Abu Ubaidah has the honor of having a verse in the Quran revealed because of one of his actions. And what that verse did is it allowed such an action for defending your own life, even if it is killing a family member. So that was his acts in the Battle of Badr. And also, he's what I just shortly call one of the 10, and it's one of the 10 Thomas Jannah. There are two hadith, one that mentions 10 people, 9 of which are Sahabi, one of which is Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and then there's another hadith which mentions 10 people, 9 of which are the same 9, and then the last one is Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah. So we count him as one of the 10 as well, inshallah. And what these are the people that are guaranteed Jannah from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as narrated by the hadith. So his life as an Amir, okay? So we went through the battles that he's been in. It's a little bit later. It's near the end of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life. It's the beginning of the other Khalifas, things like that. He's gained a status from the battles, from all the work that he's done for the Ummah. Right? So he's putting himself he's putting the Ummah before himself always in all these types of things, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam before himself as well. And so as an Amir, which is basically a governor, and he was the governor of Sham, which is where modern day Syria, Jordan is, that type of place. During the Caliphate of Umar radiallahu anhu, so Umar had a very, very strict and very awesome way of ruling the Muslim lands. And what he would do is he would go throughout the entire Muslim lands visiting his governors on surprise visits, right? So it's not like he's going to tell you that he's going to show up at your door. What he's going to do is he's just going to show up, and at any point in time, and he's going to check up on you and make sure that you're doing everything right that you should be doing. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he comes to Sham and he visits Abu Ubaidah, and he tells Abu Ubaidah, let's go to your house and eat. Hey, let's go get something to eat and we'll talk. And Abu Ubaidah's like, no, you Amir al-Mu'mineen, let's go out and eat. You'll just hurt your eyes if you come and if you come if you come eat at my place, let's just go out and eat somewhere. Umar radiallahu anhu is like, no, we'll go to your place and we'll eat. And you can imagine nowadays it'd probably be like, oh man, I have like something stashed under my bed, I hope he doesn't see it, and like you're kicking it back throughout your conversation with him. But Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah, he had a very different reason for not having Umar come. And so what happens is, and I want you to remember all the things that Abu Ubaidah had. It might be difficult, but remember it, okay? And so Umar ibn Khattab, he walks into Abu Ubaidah's place, and he sees a rug and a jug. There's nothing else in his room. There's nothing else in his house. There's nothing else there at all except for a rug for him to sleep on and a jug. And Umar radiallahu anhu, he turns to Abu Ubaidah and he asks, where is all your furniture? Where are all your things? Where are all your possessions, right? Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah says, I have no need for these things. I told you that you would just hurt your eyes coming in here looking at this. And then Umar radiallahu anhu starts to cry. Right? He's like, you're an Amir. You shouldn't be living like this. And then there's a hadith that basically Abu Umar radiallahu anhu says, he says to Abu Ubaidah that the dunya has changed all of us except for you, O Abu Ubaidah. And I'm paraphrasing it slightly because I forgot the order of it. But he says to Abu Ubaidah that the dunya has changed all of us except for you. So meaning that in the beginning of Islam, that's how a lot of them lived. It was basically very, very simple lives, just basic minimums, because first of all, they weren't in their houses probably that often. They were always out doing work for the ummah, right? So you could tell that Abu Ubaidah, he didn't have time for the dunya. He was always going out and he was always pushing forward the Deen. He was putting it before himself and he was always trying to better the world around him. So that was kind of his life as an Amir. And only once, actually first I'll go over his nickname. His nickname was actually the Amin of the Ummah, which means the trustworthy one. And there's a story behind that one. If we have time later, remind me, I'll go over it, but I want to make sure to get to Khawla as well. He also was credited with some of the first hospitals in the Middle East. So while he was Amir, he built hospitals, and we'll get over why that was really important for him to build hospitals. He also built a dam. Sham would always flood, so he built a dam to help stop the flooding because it would flood a lot, and obviously floods are bad. So he only disobeyed Umar ibn, he only disobeyed Umar radiallahu anhu once. In his entire time as an Amir, it's only recorded that he disobeyed Umar once. And what had happened was Umar radiallahu anhu had asked Abu Ubaidah to come back to where he was, which I believe at the time would be Medina. And Abu Ubaidah, he saw the letter, and there was a plague going on in Sham at that time. So he knew that that Umar radiallahu anhu wanted him to come back so he would not die of that plague. So he knew that that Umar valued him so much that he doesn't want this Amir to die from the plague. He wants to use him in other places, or he wants to use him to his fullest potential. So instead, Abu Ubaidah, he replies that, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, please basically forgive me, but I see an affliction amongst my people as an Amir, and I cannot leave them from this affliction. So please pardon me for this and basically exempt me from your previous command. And seeing this letter, Umar radiallahu anhu started to cry again. And so you can see already, this is a guy that made Umar cry twice, just from words and his own state of being. So you can see how sincere and how basically very much of a strong personality he had. But and what happened was there was a companion around Umar at that time, and he asked, because he was crying, so he asked, is Abu Ubaidah dead? He said, no, but death is near to him, because all of Sham is in a plague, and he was right. Eventually, Abu Ubaidah did die from that plague, and like I said, that's one of the reasons why he would build so many hospitals, because of the plague that was going around Sham at that time. So inshallah, that's where I want to end with Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah. Just keep that in your mind. Keep his relationships that he had throughout his life with his father, with Rasulullah, with Umar ibn al-Khattab, with the Ummah, right? So how he related with all these different types of people. And then we'll go over to Khawla, and then we'll go over some quick ways in how they gained so much strength and character, and how we can relate to that, and how they're similar in those ways. So Khawla bint al-Azwar, so not much is known about her childhood. We do know that she was around alive in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and her family. She had a brother, which was Darrar, and her clan was of the Bani Asad tribe. She was a daughter of one of the chiefs. So you can kind of think about her like a princess in modern day times, that type of thing. And her family embraced Islam in its early days. So yeah, her brother Durar, right? Her and her brother were like, they were tight, right? They did everything together. They were always hanging out together. They taught each other. They learned from one another. And lo and behold, Durar just happened to be an amazing fighter, and he was an amazing poet. So he taught all these things to his little sister, right? So Khawla is like learning how to fight. She learns martial arts. She learns swordsmanship, different types of things like that. And she also learns poetry very well. And she has beautiful poetry as well as her swordsmanship. And she learned all this from her older brother, Bilal. And so her life as a warrior. So there's not much background to Khawla as there is about Abu Ubaidah, so we'll skip straight into her life as a warrior, which there's plenty of. So she participated in battles in Syria, Jordan, and Palestine, basically like all over the Middle East. She's traveling with these armies. And just so some of you get a background on what army would typically be set up like, there would be the main army, and then behind them would be families. And families, animals, wealth of the people that were fighting, because they took everything with them, fi sabilillah, right? For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Khawla was obviously the sister of Durar, and so she would travel with the army. So then the whole family kind of goes around, and always spending time together between battles and things like that. And you can imagine how close that would make people, right? So you can imagine like nowadays, people go off to war, it's usually very far away, or you're not going with them. But you can imagine if you're in war together, how that strengthens the bonds and how much closer you'd be because of that. So her and her brother were very attached to each other. They loved each other very much. And there's one point in the Battle of, and I'm sorry if I can't pronounce this right, but Deen, which is near Jerusalem, basically. Durar, his spear breaks and he falls off his horse, right? So this is like, basically he's weaponless, rideless, he can't really get out, he's in the middle of battle, and he gets captured. Luckily though, he's of higher rank, so usually you don't kill people that are prisoners of higher rank because you can get something for them if you return them for a ransom. So what happens is that this information gets back to Khawla. And what do you think Khawla does? First reaction. Anybody? Rescue him? Anybody else? She cries. Come on. What if your sibling was stolen by Roman armies? You guys are kind of cold. Man. So her first reaction is obviously she's like distraught, like no other. She's crying. She writes poetry for him, right? Who taught her how to write the poetry? It was her brother. So she writes beautiful poetry for him. And then she's crying. But not long after, she does clear up her resolve and she decides to go after him. This is why I like to call her the modern, or the original Mulan. Okay? So, and literally, if you've seen Mulan before, picture Mulan really quick in your head when she was in the army. That's like, add a niqab and that was Khawla. Okay? And which is interesting because actually men wore niqabs too. That's why when she wore a niqab, she was not seen as a man because both men and women wore niqabs in battle. It helped with the desert dust in their faces. So what happened is she dons on black armor, okay? And she ties a green cloth around her bust and her helmet to keep it up. And she goes out into battle. And the reports of her in battle are like, you can just tell everybody was amazed by her. They describe her as a shooting arrow, as basically like trails of blood following her from like dripping of like her spear, things like that. So basically what happens is, and these aren't just like any accounts, these are the accounts of the other generals. So the generals are praising her in this way. And one of those generals was Ali ibn Abi Talib. Oh no, sorry, Khalid ibn Walid. Eventually she marries Ali ibn Abi Talib. So Durar was taken prisoner. So she decides, I'm going to get my brother back. And I'm going to kill as many Romans as it takes to do that. So she's there riding her horse around. She's going. She goes straight all the way through into the Roman ranks, right? And she's slashing out all the Romans that she goes through. This is a really common tactic in the Middle East, where they just quickly go in, come out. And what happens is the Romans obviously aren't happy. They're not going to just let somebody get away with that. They follow her, right? So they start following. You can imagine like a row of Romans following. And what happens is she turns around, kills one, goes again. Turns around, kills another. Goes again, turns around, kills another. Why do you do that? So then they kind of funnel out and they make sure that you're only fighting one at a time. It's actually it was a really smart strategy back then. I know it sounds really like, oh, of course you're going to do that. It's not what it is like in battle. You actually have to first run into them and then come out and do it. So only the most skilled of people would do that type of tactic. So she's going after her brother, and what ends up happening is the Muslims, including Khalid ibn Walid and one of his generals, or one of the other generals, they were also fighting in this battle, and one of the generals thinks that's Khalid ibn Walid. Who else could that be, right? He's this guy just completely owning the entire other army. So of course that's Khalid ibn Walid. And then he looks to his side, and there's Khalid ibn Walid. And he says, I thought that was you. And then Khalid ibn Walid's like, I thought that was you. And then they're both like, who is that? So what they decide is, okay, regardless of whoever it is, they take entire platoon to basically act as backup. So then the entire platoon, you can think about, takes out this entire Roman army area, and they stop her, and they trap her inside, because they want to know who she is. She's all covered, you can't tell who it is, and nobody knows who it is. They thought it was some of the other generals. They don't know anybody that fights like this, except for Darar, who is captured, and they know he's captured. And so they corner her. She tries to get away, actually, when asked for her identity. She tries to instantly leave, but she's encircled. She gets encircled by the other people in the platoon. And she's asked by Khalid ibn Walid, basically like who she is. And I want to get the exact quotes right, so just bear with me for a second. I have them highlighted in here. It's pretty cool. Like, her quotes are really awesome. Oh yeah, so Khalid ibn Walid asked her, like, who are you? And obviously, as soon as she speaks, you can tell it's her female voice. So she says, basically, like, Amir, I did not answer because I'm shy, right? So you can just think about this girl. Like, she just went into a Roman army like that, and like she just like completely owned everybody. And she is shy, so she's legitimately upholding her modesty. She says, "You're a great leader, and I'm only a woman whose heart is burning." And obviously, there's some like in English it doesn't quite meet the right expectations. But you can think about it, right? Her brother has been captured and taken prisoner. She's going out in a fury, right? She's completely scorned, and she wants to get her brother back. So nothing's going to stop her heart from reaching her brother. So Khalid insists, who are you though? Like, he doesn't know her name yet. So she says, I'm Khawla bint al-Azwar. I was with the women accompanying the army. And then I learned that the enemy captured my brother. I did what I did. So basically, she's like, yeah, I did that. So, so she knew that she like, shouldn't necessarily have gone out in complete disguise without telling anybody, but she was obviously very impressive in doing so. And what happens next is Khalid ibn Walid and the other general, they decide to send with her a platoon of 100 soldiers to go after the accompaniment that's about 100 Romans to go save her brother Duran. And they put her in charge of this platoon. So they put her in charge of an army of 100 after obviously showing her strength in battle. And they defeat the Romans there, they save her brother Duran. And so you can see why I kind of related this as the original Mulan type story. Yeah, except Shang is nothing like that. So Shang is the guy from Mulan, the prince that did nothing the entire movie. So there's another battle where so Khawla's like, she's earned her rank amongst the army, that type of thing. Sometimes she does go out and fight. Women are fine to go out and fight, that type of thing. So there's one point when the opposite happens to her, where her spear breaks and she loses her mare, or her steed, or whatever you want to call it, her horse. And it's always called the mare, by the way. The Muslims would always ride female horses; they were better. So what happened is she gets captured and her spear breaks, and they're taken to the Roman general's encampment, right? And actually, I misspoke. She wasn't actively in this battle. The Romans had ambushed the family camps, And then they were taking prisoners from there. And so she obviously was a warrior. They bit off more than they can chew. But eventually she defended herself, but they did take her captive. And so then she's taken to the enemy camps. And what happens is she's obviously put with all the other women. And she says some extremely, extremely inspiring words to these women. And just give me 1 minute so I can find them. So you can imagine why these women are all in the same camp together in the Roman army. And she says to them, "O daughters of Himar, and remnant of the ancient kings of Yemen." So she's like appealing to these women, like, "Hey, you guys have status. You know what I mean? You guys are noble people. Are you content to have the Roman barbarians as your sires and your children as slaves in Byzantium? Where is your heroism and surpassing skill that the Arab tribes in Arabian town and village speak so much of? I believe you are of the furthest of people from such subjugation. I think you would love to die more than bear this bondage and servitude which the Byzantines had afflicted you with." So basically she's riling up all the people that were taken as slaves in this tent, right? So then they say, like, "Yeah, okay, that's nice and everything. Like, I know I don't want to be here, obviously, but what are we going to do about it? We're in the middle of a Roman encampment." So what she says is, stay with me. They take the poles out of the tents, and then they take the stakes that are in the tents. The poles are their spears, the stakes are their daggers. And what they do is they circle around all back to back. There's about, I don't know, there's a sizable number of them, maybe 30, maybe 15 or so. And they're all back to back under Khaula's lead. And what happens is they kill about 30 Roman soldiers on their way out. And eventually what happens is there's a smaller battle that's ensuing. And I want to say it's Khalid ibn Walid comes in. And this turns into a huge battle and a huge victory for the Muslims. And what happens is about 3,000 Roman soldiers died. All the prisoners are coming back safe. That type of very happy ending for the Muslims. And then one last story about Khawla. It shows 8:15, right? Yeah? 8:30? 8:30. So one last story about Khawla, which is in another battle. So this is her third battle already. So the Muslims are being overwhelmed by this huge Roman army, right? And I take that back. This is the one where 3,000 Romans died. But so they're overwhelmed by this big Roman army, and not all, but there are many Muslims that are retreating. The way that it's set up is that the only way they can retreat is to go through their own family camps, right? So this is another reason for the family camps being there, that they encourage the fighters to keep on going. So basically, what the Romans then see is all of the women, or especially Khawla, donning their armor, getting ready to fight because they see that their loved ones are starting to lose. So Khawla, of course, is going to get in there and make sure that her brother doesn't die. You know what I mean? That type of thing. So she's donning her armor. She gets up, and she's also a poet. So when she's doing all this, she's basically like, "Boy, what are you doing? Get back into battle!" Right? So she's like, "Get." So one of the people of the Muslim army had said it was one of the reasons basically why they stayed in battle or why they turned around and went back into battle was our women were much harsher with us than the Romans. We felt that going back to fight and die was much easier than the facing the fury of our women later on. So that kind of gives she could definitely have a fiery personality too, and especially when her loved ones are in danger. Since we do have some extra time, I'll quickly go over one of the stories I skipped on Abu Ubaidah. I can get off. It's just an interesting story to hear about him. So there was one point when a Roman representative came and he comes into Sham. He asks around for Amir al-Mu'mineen, just for the Amir of Sham, and so he finds a gathering of Muslims where everybody's just kind of sitting on the ground, sitting in a circle, chilling out, And he sees one person, and he asks around for where's your Amir? Yep, they point to Abu Ubaidah. So they point to Abu Ubaidah. He's sitting there with his bow, and he's just kind of playing with an arrow in his hands. And the Romans, they aren't used to this at all, right? They're not used to people just like sitting on the ground like normal people. They're not used to like not having fancy things. They're not used to really this entire social structure that the Muslims started, right? So to him, it's like, wait, are you guys serious? Like, this is your Amir right now? Like, what, like, I believe you, but why? So he goes up to Abu Ubaidah and he asks him, it's like remember, he's here for a completely different purpose. He's here to be a Roman representative, but he can't help himself. He's like, so why are you sitting on the ground? Right? So you can tell like how foreign of a concept sitting on the ground is to him, right? And so what Abu Ubaidah says, and remember, he's Amin of the Ummah, right? So he's a trustworthy. He says, you know, I'm going to be very truthful with you. I don't have a dirham in my pocket. Like, I don't have any money. So right now, I had to borrow money from my brother to eat. So this is the Amir of Sham, and he's just saying very very honestly to this Roman, and he says, even if I did have enough money for a throne, why would I use this throne to sit on and have my Muslim brothers sit beneath me? So that's just another quick glimpse into the Amir of Sham, Abu Ubaidah as well. So let's quickly go over some lessons that we can pull, and again, how we can really relate this to strength through love. Right? So again, while we're on Abu Ubaidah, we'll go through Abu Ubaidah. So first and foremost, love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? These people are going into battle, into war, to try and progress the Deen forward. Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah, he put the Deen, he put the Quran, he put the message before himself always, and he was always concerned for the progression of the Deen. And there's even an incident with Umar radiallahu anhu where Abu Ubaidah had criticized Umar for wearing like more or less tattered clothing, and Umar radiallahu anhu had criticized him for this, and perhaps Abu Ubaidah was wrong in this matter, but his heart was still trying to push forward for the progression of the Deen. The reason why he criticized Umar radiallahu anhu for wearing these like tattered clothing was because he thought that it would put a damper on the progression of the Deen. So that was his mindset in that situation as well. So you can even see that that was always the first thing on his mind, was trying to push forward the religion. And through this love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what really granted him the ability to do that was having it in his heart that this is something that matters, and it matters more than myself. So another thing that they both obviously had much love for was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so we can tell Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah literally gave his two front teeth for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, to take the helmet out of his face. And he's of those who protected Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Battle of Badr. He was in the major battles, I believe, if not all the battles, with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was appointed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as an Amir, and you could tell when you really love somebody, they're always on your mind. And not only that, but it's usually reciprocated in some way, especially from somebody that's sincere. And we know there's nobody going to be more sincere than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what had happened was there was a representative coming to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, you know, I'm kind of interested in this religion. I want to take it back to my people. Can you give me somebody that is trustworthy amongst you to send with me? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, come in the evening, and by then I'll have somebody for you. And Umar radiallahu anhu had heard this. Okay, so Umar radiallahu anhu goes to Dhuhr early, right? So you can imagine people lining up for Dhuhr, and like after the Salah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam turns around, and Umar, he kind of sits up a little bit straighter, a little bit more, just to like kind of like, you know, hey, I'm here too. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam choose Abu Ubaidah to be that trustworthy person to go forward and represent Islam in the other nations, or in the other places. So you could tell that there was this trust from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam going towards Abu Ubaidah. Not only that, but there was this trust from Abu Ubaidah going towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam died, there was obviously a great grief amongst the Ummah, and one of the things that happened in that short span of time after he died, before Abu Bakr was given bay'ah, given allegiance by the other Muslims, Umar radiallahu anhu went to Abu Ubaidah saying, give me your hand and I'll have the bay'ah for you. You're like basically saying that you're the best of us. Abu Ubaidah refused. And he said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a wisdom in this. He had Abu Bakr lead salah when he was sick and when he was ill. And people that lead salah are the amirs, right? So if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Abu Bakr to lead salah, Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah knew that means that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam basically is making a choice for Abu Bakr to be the amir. And for those of you that don't know, Abu Bakr, he really didn't want to have that responsibility, and he didn't he was not the biggest proponent for him leading salah either, because he would always cry in his salah, and it made it very interesting when somebody always cries when they lead salah. But in general, so he pushed back being the amir, being given bay'ah by Umar radiallahu anhu, and then instead he went directly to Abu Bakr and he gave bay'ah to him, which is allegiance, as Amir al-Mu'mineen. So, and then so that was his love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And again, he had this love for the progression of the ummah, right? He's the one that's building hospitals. He's the one that's building dams. He's the one staying with the army. He's the one staying with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's the one trying to push the deen as far as it can go. He's the one that's also one of the most diplomatic for the ummah. So he's trying to push it forward, but he's not trying to push it forward so much that he knows it'll break. So you can kind of think of somebody that's tending a fire. If any of you have ever tried this or done it, not on the stove, not just doing this and like that, but like actually tending a fire, right? It's something that you have to always keep watch of, and you can't feed it too much, right? So you can't push it too hard, otherwise it'll burn itself out. But you can't feed it too little, otherwise it'll die out. So it's something that you always have to keep watch of, and this is basically what Abu Ubaidah did for the ummah, right? So he's always keeping a watch on it. He's not pushing it too far forward. He was a great diplomat for the ummah. There was a point where he was appointed as a general instead of Khalid ibn Walid under the Khalifa of Umar radiallahu anhu. And some people would say like, oh, you know, there's some beef between Khalid ibn Walid and Umar radiallahu anhu. That's not the case. It's basically, there's a lot of proponents towards Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah to be an emir, and we went through a lot of them today, like especially his patience towards others. So Abu Ubaidah could be a very good proponent towards Islam. Like, you know, he would sit down, he would be diplomatic with people, he'd be patient with the non-Muslims, things like that, and he could convert people without going towards war at all. Khalid ibn Walid received a special pillow from the Christians and he tore it in half. So there's definitely a mindset behind all the different types of decisions that go on in the ummah, and really his love for the progression of the ummah and the way that he went about it really exemplifies his character as not only simplistic, but a really a firm one. It's kind of an interesting mixture in him, but I think that it really does exemplify his love, and that's where he drew his strength from. This love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the ummah. And then these are things, don't think that, oh man, Abu Ubaidah was awesome, he's starting hospitals, he's like building dams, he's fighting in armies. I mean, yes, but where did he get all the strength from? He got it from love, right? So if we love these types of things too, right? If we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the ummah, things like that, we can build up that love, and in doing so, we'll build up our strength, inshallah. And Khawla, bint al-Aswad, obviously she too had a love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and a love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She showed this in her battles, in putting herself on the front lines when basically she's just like overcome with love. There's really no other way to describe it. She herself describes her heart as being on fire, right? So she's so like infuriated that somebody's trying to get between her and like what she loves. Part of which is her brother, and part of which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why are they fighting in the first place, right? And again, so her love for her family and the ummah, right? So she's part of the company that's with the armies. So she's in that family encampment. So every single day, not only is like, you know, sure, she can go out and beast the battle, right? But every single day, she also has to worry about those that can't, right? It's a huge responsibility to have that ability and not be able to protect everyone. So you can think about how much love she would have for all those people, for the ummah, for the other people in the army, for the people in the encampments, and then still have all of her skills and abilities to try and put forward. And that's really what drove her, is the love for all these people, right? So she has the skill sets taught from her brother, which they learned when they were kids and they grew up together, that type of thing. But the ability to use that and how she grew her strength was through the love that she gained for the Ummah, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for Rasulullah and for her brother. And then, last but not least, definitely not least, I think it's a really interesting one for this topic, which is strength through love. And I think it's really, really exemplified in Khawla bint al-Azwar, is that she had a love for herself. And by that, I mean she had the self-respect, right? So she wasn't like, oh no, the Muslims are losing, my brother got captured, let's sit around and do nothing and life is over. But no, she had enough respect for herself to realize, you know what, I can do something about this and I can change my situation. So she had this love for herself, which was self-respect, that she could then go and push forward, to push the Deen forward, to push the army forward, to basically show what she's made of. So inshallah, I want to end with that. Inshallah, if I said anything incorrect, it's from myself and shaitan, and inshallah, if I said anything beneficial, it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. And before announcements or anything, things to share, any questions, stuff like that. I know we kind of bulleted right through, and I didn't really give people a chance to speak or anything like that. And it is a halaqa, so feel free to share your thoughts and ideas and questions and things like that. Inshallah, it'd be better for all of us to hear it.
So any reflections on this? Any action points that we could take away? Because one of the reasons we're doing this Sahaba series, and I mentioned this with the guys earlier, was that the Sahaba were like, before the Prophet ﷺ came, these people were just like us, if not, kind of worse in their, position, their morality, whatever. So these people are people that, we can relate to on a greater level, and they're people whose lives we can take a greater lesson from. So we heard from people like Abu Ubaidah bin Al-Jarrah and Khaulah. So what are these lessons that we can take away from their lives? What are these action points? Something that we can actually take away this week, today, and something throughout this next week, implement, inshallah, and improve ourselves as people. Is there anybody who has a point to be made? Yeah.
First of all, good job. That was great. I really thorough, loved it. I think one of the greatest points to take from this is selflessness. Is that knowing that your love for the Ummah, your love for the brothers and sisters in Islam precedes everything. And so always do something for someone who you are, with intention to support and benefit people.
So one of the stories that Deen brought up was when Umar came to Abu Ubaidah to pledge, his allegiance, saying, "Yeah, you're going to be the next Khalifa. You're going to be the Khalifa. You're going to be our leader after this. You just go ahead and take that role." But he realized that there was somebody that was, above him in position. He realized that he wasn't actually the best person to fit the job. But imagine that, that status, that position. If any of us had been in that position, would we have been okay, taking that position? It was such a huge deal. But Abu Ubaidah realized that, he wasn't the best person for the job. So there was no ego clash, he didn't have an ego. He realized that there was a better person to take that spot, and he was content with giving a better person the opportunity to do what he was supposed to. And anything else? One more?
If not, I'll go ahead and just share some more. So, I guess, you just mentioned the story of Abu Ubaidah, right?
Yeah.
With Umar?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so just to quickly piggyback off that and then go to a final point before you start making with that probably. Unless I'm about to make you
No, okay.
But, when Abu Bakr, Umar radiallahu anhu was about to die, and he was trying to figure out who was the next Khalifa, he said that it would be an easy decision if Abu Ubaidah was still alive.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.